morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. We are closely tracking all of the Epstein developments and fallout. We're going to start with what is going on inside the Trump administration, to the best of how we can parse that, including an instantly infamous truth social from the president himself. We have new questions about that video they released and a potential cover-up. We've got the MAGA reaction, which is at this point sort of all over the board, all across the board. So Trump actually getting ratioed on Truth Social potentially for the first time. So interesting things developing there. Epstein's brother is speaking out in an interview with Don Lemon. At the same time, there's some other important stories we are tracking as well. A bunch of things that are happening on the immigration front, including a new poll that shows Americans more supportive of immigrants in some ways than ever before. Obvious reaction to some of the actions taken by the Trump administration. We also have new details and reporting about Alligator Alcatraz and exactly who was sent there, so you don't want to miss that. FEMA is under fire as they attempt to respond to those horrific floods down in Texas. Apparently, they had let go a bunch of contractors who are supposed to answer phone calls from disaster victims, and so many of those victims unable to get anyone on the phone to help them in this horrific time of need. So we will take a look at that as well. If you're a premium subscriber, we'll also be doing an AMA Live. If you guys want to be part of those every single week, make sure you subscribe at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Thank you to everybody who has been doing so. Breakingpoints.com. If you want to join us, you have a monthly or a yearly membership that you can go ahead and support the show. We got a lot of new people coming in from Tucker Carlson, from Epstein, so many different stories that we've been covering here. And so it is amazing to have all of you. And thank you, and we welcome you. And with all of that being said, let's turn now to the Epstein story. And perhaps one of the most insane Trump, truths that has happened yet so far.
And
let's go ahead.
A high bar.
And that is a very high bar. I've covered this man from day one. Let's go ahead and put it up there on the screen. What do we have? What's going on with my boys and, in some cases, gals? They are all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is doing a fantastic job. We are on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration, the talk of the world. Selfish people are trying to hurt it, all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. For years, it's Epstein, over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the loser and criminals of the Biden administration, who conned the world with the Russia hoax and the laptop from hell? They created the Epstein files, just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton dossier that they used on me, and now my so-called friends are playing right into their hands. Why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? If there was anything in there that could have hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? They haven't given up on JFK or Martin Luther King. No matter how much success we have had securing the border, blah, 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 it is never enough for some people. We are about to achieve more in 6 months than history. We continue there with some more platitudes. The left is imploding, and then Kash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, the rigged election of 2020, and arresting thugs and criminals, and spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left-inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. Let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. And then I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, and then finally, 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country owner in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Well, okay, so there's a lot going on there. Obama created the Epstein files. The Epstein files, even though Epstein himself was arrested in prosecuted, etc., in 2019, and then eventually died in federal custody under the first Trump administration. The quote Epstein files allegedly were in possession of first the Trump and then the Biden administration. If he's saying that Obama created the Epstein files, it's actually a very interesting story, because why were they having all these files before and after, before he was, a part of this grand whole conspiracy, and after, the non-prosecution agreement that, of course, was reached under his administration. But, I mean, more broadly, what's the message that's being sent there? Everybody back off. There's nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. Case closed. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, everybody else, you guys need to stay where you're put, and the rest of MAGA, you guys just need to move on. We have much bigger things that are happening right now. Is that working? No, it's actually not. But,
yeah, it's nothing to see here, but in like 1,000 words,
right.
Which makes everyone, want to focus even more on this than they already were. If you're keeping track at home, first, when they were running, it was we were going to release the files.
Correct.
Then it's Pam Bondi saying the files are on my desk and we're reviewing all the thousands of hours of video, et cetera. Then it's there's nothing to see in the files. Then it's there are no files. And now it's the files were created by Obama and Hillary. So just if you're trying to keep track with where we are. And I mean, listen, it's actually important to dig into the details of this screed. Because, first of all, the claim that, oh, nobody cares and this is just a fixation of the left is just so preposterous that, you know, I think there are some people on the left who have been interested in the Epstein files, myself included, but this has been primarily a sort of right-wing coded interest. So that's preposterous. And obviously there is a ton of interest in this, especially from your own base. The other piece here is, you know, the explicit support for Pam Bondi is really important. We'll get to more of these developments in just a second, because one of the talking points that some of the sort of MAGA influencers have been landing on is this is all Pam Bondi's fault. And originally there was maybe it's Kash Patel's fault, maybe it's Dan Bongino's fault. Well, Trump had already put on his truth saying, no, 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 they're doing a fantastic job. Back to the basics at the FBI, they're doing exactly what they should do. So then all the attention is shifted to Pam Bondi and wow, it must be all her fault and let's just pin this on her. And that way we can keep the big guy's hands clean. So him coming in and saying, no, she also is doing a great job and I also am 100% happy with her. It just gives them very little room to operate in terms of whatever sort of like spin and cope that the MAGA influencer world wants to put on this to, of course, always absolve Trump of any direct responsibility.
Right. Well, I mean, in some ways, it's actually quite helpful because what Trump has done is saying, no, I own this. Everybody needs to move on. He's given 2 statements now, one on camera and now at Truth Social at this point, being like, there's nothing to see here. Everybody needs to move on. Your guys are actually crazy. By the way, when he's like, why are you all focused on Epstein? He recently, after he tweeted that, or truthed, I apologize, truthed, I believe on Sunday, about stripping Rosie O'Donnell of her citizenship. And it's like, oh, okay. So we can't talk about Epstein, but you're focused on the important things like Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship after she left the country. What else do you want? She left. You know, she actually lived up to her word. All right, let's get to the Truth Social point, as you said, and this is part of why Trump owning it is actually quite bad for him, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Perhaps the very first ratio ever in Truth Social history. I'm going to read some of the replies to Donald Trump. Again, keep this in mind. This is on Truth Social, his own platform. You are losing too many people in your base. Have an aide collect what we're all saying over social media. Pam Bondi has not been telling the truth. Her story has changed each time. Sir, you need to listen to us. Are you aware how long many of us work to get the truth? We refuse to give us a pass for the U.S. This will not go away. This is about the children. Another top reply. Americans care because they need accountability. Without accountability, the sickos that were his customers are likely to be abusing children. On top of that, it is a slap in the face to many of the victims that have come forward. Next, this is going to cost you so many supporters. I am one of them. I have been to multiple rallies. I was there on January 6th. This is one of the main things that needs to be fixed. Our 2-tiered system of justice needs to end. We, the people, are tired of it. They can't be charged with child trafficking without there being perpetrators. And then he goes on. Next, Mr. President, you did make the promise. Just saying. We want them exposed. You promised us that. Pam promised us that. Kash promised us that. Now it's our fault because we want that promise fulfilled and call Pam out when she lies. What else are you lying to us about? And so you can see there is certainly a full-blown revolt going on, or at least there was, allegedly, inside of the administration over the weekend. We thought about doing breaking news here, but we're like, let's see how it plays out. Because Kash Patel, Bongino in particular, were kind of floating these trial balloons. It's like, it's Bongino or it's Pam Bondi. I will say Bongino himself apparently took a day of vacation on Friday and kicked up a storm about this entire situation where he kind of posed it between him and Bondi. We're going to get a little bit into some of the details and more. But Kash Patel has now come out and said, he's not leaving. Let's go ahead and put that up there on the screen. He says, the conspiracy theories just aren't true. Never have been. It's an honor to serve the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and I'll continue to do so for as long as he calls on me. Now, the conspiracy theories that Kash is apparently referencing are, let's say, the ones that he actually went on camera and, made himself very rich from spreading. So at that time, it was a conspiracy, and now he says it's not a conspiracy. Now, you could say, well, he's seen some more information and he's reviewed them, which basically comes down to trust me, because at the same same time, Krystal, if he released all of the information and then we could make up our minds for ourselves and say, okay, he got over his skis or whatever, and now here's we are, so be it. I honestly, I mean, wouldn't everybody happy? It's not a giant grand conspiracy. Instead, they put out this memo, which apparently, we're going to get to this in a second, was basically signed off by Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi. So it really is the three of them together. And then, of course, just elucidates all of this insane rage on controversy online. It's after that that Bongino, Kash Patel, and others at least try to distance themselves, but ultimately Trump gets on the phone and he's like, no, you guys need to come. He's like, you need to come out and show the flag and to support this. But, you know, to just say, quote, the conspiracy theories aren't true, when you yourself talked for years about how the FBI director himself has direct access to this. I mean, there's tape of all this. I feel crazy, like literally going on Glenn Beck's show saying the FBI director himself has direct access to this. As director, here's exactly where I would look for it. They assigned details and all of these agents to the investigation. Allegedly, they said that the client list was on my desk, the flight log. I've seen them. There's been thousands of victims. I could go on forever in just terms of the public record. And now the conspiracy theories aren't true. And if I had it, don't you think I would give it to you? No, I don't. And it's like, that is really what it all boils down to.
Because you were either lying then or you're lying now.
Exactly.
So in neither case should we trust you.
Correct.
Like that much is really clear. And you know, we'll talk more about the MAGA reaction and where I think they'll all sort of end up ultimately. But I do think I underestimated how central Epstein was to the sort of like core MAGA faithful lore. Like their idea, their conception of who Trump is. And the way he would behave in office. And, you know, not everybody in MAGA was like a QAnon believer, but those things sort of tie in together, right? Where there's this evil cabal of elites in the deep state who are destroying the country and, you know, doing these horrible things with children. And Trump is going to be our white knight to come in and expose it all. There's going to be a day of reckoning. We just have to trust the plan and believe. And now for him to come in and say, not only is there no conspiracy and nothing to see here, but you all are ridiculous for even asking questions about this, that's a hard pill to swallow. And all of the previous, you know, avenues of saying, okay, well, maybe it's Pam Bondi, maybe it's Dan Bongino, maybe it's Kash Patel, he is closing off all of those avenues. So you really have to reckon with, okay, well, why is this man that I trusted so much to expose these elite sex crimes, why is he now seemingly part of the plot? And like I said, we'll get to some of the explanations that are being offered. Alex Jones has some theories going on in the MAGA section. I think ultimately they will, by and large, all come around to some sort of theory that they can live with and move on. But this has definitely sort of shaken the online MAGA faithful. I also want to say, like, I have a little bit of humility, too, about how far this penetrates into normie America, because it is very much an online phenomenon, you know, but I think it does contribute to the sense of, like, you know, this administration is just not really what was promised to us. Like, this is just not really going the way that I thought it would go. Trump is not exactly the character that I thought that he was. So in that way, I think it may have some sort of lasting impact.
Let's not all overstate it. And let's say that, of course, and this is, again, this is always a problem with MAGA versus the right versus the general public. There are 80-something million people who voted for Donald Trump, okay? Then let's shrink it down to who consider themselves MAGA within that. Maybe 35, 40%. The rest are like ordinary, normie Republicans, and then there's a whole bunch of independents and other people. So let's talk about groups. The MAGA people who are watching Alex Jones, of course, they're going to come around. In my opinion, many of these Truth Social reply guys, eventually, like you said, they will invent a story. But there are a lot of people for whom this was an entree into politics, where there's a vibe base, which got people to vote for Donald Trump, maybe to look past what they saw were some of his most distasteful things. And that very much leads to same, you know, new boss, same as the old boss. That mentality is very destructive to the outsider fighting the insider, and it's one that really just makes him as cut from the same cloth as other people, and in particular the way that he's handling this story. So it's not the story itself, it's kind of the veneer around him, his administration, which is seen as like this upstart, you know, we'll fit it with Doge and the original kind of promises of November and all that. We're going to come in, we're going to break things, it's going to be a new day, a new dawn.
Clean
and
house.
We're going to clean house. And it's like, well, you know, I'm not seeing it. It's like, so far, the major legislation is this massive tax cut, and it's like, oh, and we're covering up the Epstein thing. Oh, and we bombed Iran, and I could go on.
Right.
Actually, by the way, we'll get it tomorrow. Today, Donald Trump is shipping Patriot missiles and offensive weapons, long-range missiles to Ukraine. Okay, yeah, okay. Interesting. Well, let's go and put A4 up on the screen. And this is from Laura Loomer, just to describe what I was talking about with Bongino. She says, Bongino seriously thinking about resigning from the FBI as the deputy director. Quote, as I exclusively reported earlier today, Bongino took the day off from work to evaluate whether he not wants to continue in his position. I will say out of all of them, he is, in my opinion, the most tenuous, just because he, I mean, look, this was a central thing for him. And I mean, even Tucker and many of others said, it's like, dude, how can you actually go back to your show in good faith, like ever? Because he's left his show, The Bongino Report, which is being hosted right now by my friend Vince Coligny's. But how could you ever credibly go back after you've participated in all of this when you spent years building up an audience for promises of going through the deep state and ravaging and showing the truth? It's like you've already busted a whole lot of your credibility. And in particular, actually, if you put A5 up on the screen, this is pretty devastating for Dan Bongino and for Kash Patel. So this is basically about the clash between Bondi and their handling of the Epstein files. You know, he didn't come to work on Friday, apparently got into a shouting match between the two. But at the center, really, of all of this is really a question about this so-called memo that was released, unsigned, right? You know, by the administration. Actually, a lot of people were like, "Hey, is this actually legit?" But you know, what has now come out from inside a lot of the reporting is that both Kash Patel and Bongino did sign off on the content of this memo before it went public, and so I think for them, they were shocked at the public reception for what happened after the. Basically, I don't think they expected the public perception, just because, I mean, the DOJ effectively told us case closed. Like, it's over. Our hands are washed of this thing. It was one thing when Kash is on Rogan. What did Schultz say? It was like bug-eyed or whatever, like looking like a crazy. We're like, if I had it, do you think I would tell you? You know, and that's one thing. It's still pretty crazy, but we're like, okay, you know, maybe we're still working towards the release of the files and things like that. It's a whole other thing for him, for, you know, the FBI, the AG to just say it's done, after going on the White House lawn and saying totally opposite things, and then for the President of the United States to just come on and be like, yep, actually, we're completely done here, there's nothing to see, and we are moving on. You know, that is really a whole other level. So I actually do still think that this is an important story for a variety of reasons. And, you know, the vibes got Donald Trump elected in many ways, in my opinion, and now they're moving against him. It also, I think, shuts down, and we're going to get to this a little bit in terms of podcast, you know, reaction, etc. I don't see the Theo Vaughn, JD convos hanging out anymore. I don't see how that can really happen credibly at this point, because, I mean, in a certain way, for a lot of these guys, they feel used because they made a lot of promises on their platforms. Yeah. And then a lot of those things do what? They go the opposite. And so if you were ever to come back, it would frankly just have to be a way more of a critical conversation that the administration is not prepared for. I mean, does anyone want to know which interview Trump did during the Epstein files? Does anyone want to guess? It was with his daughter-in-law on Fox News.
With another Trump.
Which was pre-taped. Okay, yeah, that's really transparency that we're watching over there. But you see what I'm saying? I mean, you know, at this point, it's going to be Trump. Maybe, you know, the rope line, like, we'll see what we get from that. But in terms of like a sit down for that 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, or whatever, I'm not seeing that coming anytime soon. And that's a big problem, I think, for the Trump administration, which, you know, really wanted to put their foot in that well of just constantly trying to keep the internet and all that stuff on their side. So I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to understate its importance either.
The Bongino thing, they had this line in the Axios report. They said one official, a senior administration official, told them, the fact is Dan was for releasing the information with the video and had no problem until he got heat online. And listen, they might be lying. They're almost definitely spinning. But I do find it credible just from the way that he reacted. As you said, he signed off on that memo. And then it's only after the shit hits the fan that suddenly he's mad at Pam Bondi and he's having a fight and whatever. I suspect, like, working in government has just not been really what Dan Bongino expected it to be. Being a podcaster is a great life, let's be honest. Like,
that's awesome.
You know, it's way easier than having to actually go into an office every day. I don't know if you saw, there was a video of him talking, I don't know, a couple months ago, where he's basically talking about how depressed he was. He's like, I just sit in the office, I stare at these four walls, like, I miss my wife. I mean, he practically was like in tears about how much the job was like making him miserable. So it wouldn't surprise me also if he's kind of looking for an out, you know? And so I don't know that he's correct, that he could salvage his reputation with MAGA at this point, because there still would be so many questions, right? Like, so are there files or aren't there? What did you see? Why did you sign off on this? But he may be thinking, okay, this is the last moment when I can get out.
Yeah.
I can maintain some of my credibility because I walked away because I was disgusted with how this was handled, and I can go back to the very nice life I had before I went into government.
Listen, that would be the honorable thing to do, because you built your whole career on this thing, and if you came out and if you really came out and you told people the truth about stuff that happened behind the scenes, yes, I was coerced or whatever in design, but look, resigning in protest is the honorable thing that you're supposed to do if you totally disagree with a policy, and in particular, it'd be good for your career. I mean, listen.
I mean, maybe, but then again, like, what is the truth? The truth is probably like, oh, actually, Donald Trump didn't want us to move forward with this, and he has an audience that isn't really going to want to hear that.
See, I'm not so sure. I really think at this point that there's a big opening, and we'll talk about this, with MAGA reaction, but with Tucker, I mean, look, and I've personally experienced this after just being on the pod. Like, there are MAGA faithful people out there, people I never in a million years who I thought would have been an entree point to which for criticism of Trump, who are fuming, frothing at the mouth. And I do think that that's a space where, look, you can be honest about it. Like, you don't have to make it into a big indictment of the whole administration. You just be like, look, on this thing, he said this, I thought it was a shutdown, it's corrupt, and this is not what I signed up for. At the end of the day, I still support, the president's initial campaign promises, but at the end of the day, this was a bridge too far for me. If you put it that way, I mean, you basically make yourself unattackable, from any sort of like, oh, he's a lib or whatever, and you tell the truth. I could be wrong. I could be. But at this point, he's in a tough position.
Yeah.
Let's get to A7 here from Harry Enton, just about how there has been a huge Streisand effect on the Epstein story. By trying to shut it down, the public is actually never more interested than ever before. Let's take a listen.
What a massive, unforced error by the Trump administration. Donald Trump would love this story to go away, but in fact, interest is climbing higher and higher, to quote Jackie Wilson. Look at this. Google searches for Epstein up 1,200% this week versus last. And get this, it is currently the top topic search with Trump on Google alongside his presidency. I mentioned tariffs earlier on, right? Epstein has been Googled a lot since Monday. He has actually been Googled 1.4 times as much as tariffs has been Googled. And that is, of course, a huge news story. How about Grok, which is another insane news story this week? I mean, my goodness gracious. But in fact, Epstein has been Googled 2.5 times as much as the Grok story has been Googled. But get this, Trump releasing more Epstein files in 2025. This is the betting market odds. You go back 2 months ago, it was 43%. You go back even a month ago, it was 39%. But now it's just at 20%. I think that there are going to be a lot of the normally MAGA fan base who are going to be very disappointed. And this is all a self-inflicted error by Trump.
Yeah, exactly right. Again, really the irony is, in my opinion, if they had just dragged their feet for another 2 years and just kept trying to push it along, they would not have had the same. People then could be like, hey, where are the Epstein files? But there's shit going on. We have other things to cover and to worry about, etc. But by doing this and trying to shut it down in such a ham-fisted way, the day before the Israeli prime minister comes, people have no choice but to be asking, what the hell is going on in here? And it's all a choice by the administration. Let's not forget that. There was no pressing timeline.
Right.
There was no report. There was no real mandate for why they had to do this way, other than they wanted to shut it down, perhaps. And it's forgive me for noticing, the day before that the prime minister of Israel comes here to the United States for the third time. These things are just too much, at a certain point for people to stop paying attention. And I do think it's creating quite a rift, not just in MAGA, but I mean, for a lot of people, JFK is like this.
Yeah.
It's actually a real Rorschach test. Like, if you ask somebody, like, hey, did JFK kill himself? In the 70s, if you ask that, it's like, you're a Democrat. Like, that's just basically how it was. It's like, you're voting for Carter, you're voting for McGovern or any of these other people. And it took a long long time for it to become more of a bipartisan type thing. With the Epstein thing, like you were saying, it was more right-wing coded, but I'm actually, hopefully now, watching a lot of Democrats actually wake up. I'm watching Ro Khanna, and I'm watching John Ossoff and other Democratic politicians. They're not stupid. They can see how these things are bubbling up online, and they're like, hey, hold on a second. Like, what's going on here? Listen, I'll take political opportunism. It's fine with me. And that actually could really red pill, I think, a lot of the Democratic base now in the future. They'll have to get over the Clinton stuff. He's, you know, it's been 30 years, guys. We can throw Clinton under the bus.
Yes,
let's just do it, and let's all move on to a better place as a country.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, the way that Trump has behaved, he's just acting so guilty.
Yes, I know.
So
it's
guilty.
Crazy.
Oh, we'll talk more about it. But I mean, listen, a lot of his longtime established connection to Epstein was just sort of major blind spot from the right. They only wanted to hear about Clinton or Bill Gates. And it was always so glaring and out there. I mean, we've got the photos, we've got the flight logs, we've got Epstein himself saying they were close friends for years and years. And Trump has been accused of all sorts of sexual crimes by dozens of women at this point. So the idea that he was going to be the guy to release it, especially when he was always uncomfortable when he got asked about it, I mean, it was always sort of preposterous. But he did enough to play into it. And then you had J.D. Vance out there saying, yes, release the files. And you had a whole MAGA influencer world that was all spun up around this. So they believed that he would really be the guy. And now that he's behaving in this just like preposterously guilty way, you know, with this long, unhinged Truth Social post and snapping at a reporter that dared to ask about it and saying, this is ridiculous, we need to just move on, trying to put out this memo saying, oh, case closed, nothing to see here, right before Benjamin Netanyahu is in town, and also just after Elon had gone after him and said, well, the truth is that Trump is in the Epstein files. It all looks suspicious as hell. And that is a good transition to this video that they released, which was supposed to assure all of us that Jeffrey Epstein definitely killed himself and there was absolutely nothing to see there, Saagar.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.